Welcome and good morning, everyone. First, I hope everyone is healthy and safe and staying that way. My name is Andrea Ray, and I have the pleasure to serve as the President CEO at the Seattle Southside Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of our board and staff, welcome to our SMART Southside Mitigation and Recovery Task Force webinar on hospitality and tourism. Our webinar series is a strategic initiative dedicated to our mission at our chamber to connect, convene, and create economic opportunity for South King County. That mission hasn't changed with the pandemic, but our delivery methods certainly have. We're grateful you can join us today. We all know the tourism industry has been hit hard by the pandemic as flights and cruises have been canceled and plans put on hold globally. We're grateful that Katherine Kertzman from the Seattle Southside Regional Tourism Authority is here with us this morning to share thoughts about current issues as well as what we might be looking forward to in the future. Each week, SMART will present a new topic on a subject impacting our community. Next week, we hope you'll join us as we look at how the business community is responding to the governor's phased-in approach for reopening and share guidance on what businesses should be planning for and what consumers can expect as we begin to move forward and continue to adapt. You can register for all of our webinars on our website, seattlesouthsidechamber.com. We know providing opportunities to share information and connect will make our community stronger and ready for recovery. We hope you can join us for more of these opportunities. And if your company or you are able to donate or sponsor it as we continue to serve our community through this challenge. Every little bit helps to keep our nonprofit strong and continue to serve you and our community. Thank you. So again, Katherine Kertzman serves as CEO and President of the Seattle Southside Regional Tourism Authority. They are an amazing civic partner for our organization. We share more than a name. We share a vision for our region. Katherine is responsible for competitively marketing the Seattle Southside region as an ideal travel destination. Katherine is a tourism industry veteran and brings more than 25 years of executive experience to the hospitality industry to the team. Under her leadership, Katherine has helped develop Seattle Southside into one of the leading destination marketing organizations in Washington State. Katherine currently serves on the board of Washington State Destination Marketing Organizations as past chair and has earned the prestigious designation as a certified destination management executive and a certified tourism ambassador. Katherine holds a degree from Washington State University and completed master's coursework from the University of Houston in Galveston. Katherine, thank you so much for making time this morning. We appreciate it. Over to you.
Thank you to the task force, to Andrea, and to all of you attending today. This week happens to be Travel and Tourism Week nationally. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about our industry, particularly at this very difficult time. As Andrea said, our industry has been devastated by COVID-19. So today I'll walk you through some industry data points as a result of the impact of the virus. We'll talk about traveler sentiment and their thinking about whether they're ready to travel and what it will take, and then our plans for the recovery. So with that, I'll begin with the next slide. According to gross national product, or domestic product, GDP, produced, tourism ranks the fourth as an export industry in Washington State, followed by software, aerospace, agriculture, and food in our state. So let's take a look at that more specifically to King County. Visitor spending does not just affect businesses within our traditional hospitality industries, but it also spreads much further. So let's look at lodging, for example. That is 35.4% or $2 billion of visitor spending. 27.5% for food and beverage or $1.6 billion. This is just King County. 14.7% for retail, that's $0.8 billion. 11.6 for recreation, that's attractions, sporting events, arts, and culture. That's $0.7 billion. And local transportation is 10.9% or 0.6 billion visitor spending. The most significant indirect impacts are business services such as finance, real estate, and insurance. Taxes generated by tourism supports public services such as education, public works, emergency services. So you can see that our industry is a very important industry within our county and our state. Next slide, please. And looking more closely about Seattle Southside, for these numbers, that composes the cities of SeaTac, Tukwila, and Des Moines. And I want to assure you, even though we track these numbers for the Seattle Southside destination of these three cities, because they're the cities who pay the tourism promotion assessment, we work regionally in all of South King County and with downtown Seattle, Visit Seattle. But for those three cities, over 4 million overnight visitors stayed in Seattle Southside. 79.2 million were generated in this, taxes were generated locally and state taxes in Seattle Southside. 771 million in travel spending was generated in Seattle Southside. And 230.2 million in earnings or payroll for jobs. Next slide, please. The RTA's role in all of that visitor spending can be tracked to activities in marketing and tourism promotion. 291 million in visitor spending can be attributed directly to the RTA's tourism promotion efforts. According to our conversion study, travelers that come through the RTA stay longer and spend more. So if you look at a hotel in SeaTac, for example, their average length of stay is 1.5 days. But if we can interact with that traveler prior to making their travel plans, their average length of stay rises to 3.54 nights, and their visitor spend is over $1,000 per visit. The RTA sales team met with 394 planners around the country and generated 11,329 booked rooms. And for the past 5 years, we've maintained an ROI of greater than $40 of visitor spending for every $1 we invest. Next slide, please. Well, with all that good news, come early March, the world was impacted by COVID-19. You can see 86% of the world is now under travel restrictions. You can see the progression from March 9th to the March 24th. It basically covers the world. COVID-19 pandemic has impacted our industry disproportionately hard. Local visitor industry data shows significant, economic impact across every industry sector. Travel industry losses will far exceed that of any other sector, and that's 6 times the impact of 9/11. Next slide, please. So as we saw the COVID-19 cases rising, we also saw a correlation between revenue per available room in the United States decrease. Next slide. In fact, that revenue per available room nationally has dropped 83.6%. And we believe that, according to Smith, or it's now called STR, that will be the new norm for the future until we see some mitigation regarding the virus or vaccine. So this is the worst record in 25 years of SDR collecting data. Next slide. You can see here nationally, we pretty much wiped out the group market. So no business meetings, no conventions. There is a little bit of transit still occurring, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in depth in the next slide. Next slide, please. When we look at class performance, that's the hotel class classifications, meaning different types of property. On the economy side, comparatively, it's still relatively healthy. 1 in 3 rooms are sold. It's interesting that they don't normally get a lot of love and attention in a regular cycle because people are focused on that upscale and mid-scale property. But it's interesting to see that they're holding their own. People are staying in those properties, maybe even living in those properties as they shelter from family and friends. Next slide, please. And speaking of extended stays, this is interesting. Regarding extended stay properties, the lower end of extended stay properties are selling over 50%. So if you look at all of those extended stay properties, the upper and lower they're averaging a 40% occupancy. Next slide, please. So this COVID has impacted our pipeline of new hotels under construction. And if we look back at the recession, we had in 2008, we were at a high of 211,000 rooms under construction nationally. And then the recession occurred and that dropped off significantly to 50,000 rooms. And then over the years up to 2020, March of this year, we began to rebuild that pipeline. If you look at the next slide, this slide is a little hard to read, but the left are those projects to be deferred and the right are those projects to be abandoned. And just like after the recession in 2008, we expect the same thing will happen here. More pipeline projects will move to deferred or abandoned, as we saw in the 2008 recession. For the month of March, there were 9 final planning projects and 21 planning projects moved to deferred. At the same time, 1 final planning and 7 planning projects moved to abandon. And STR predicts this will accelerate rapidly. So let's take a little closer look at home. What's happening here in the county and Seattle Southside? Next slide, please. So if you look at the county, there are 11 convention hotels. And those hotels' occupancy has dropped to 5%. That's a decline of 94, and it seems to be holding at that rate. Next slide, please. As far as the average daily rate for those hotels, it has declined 39%. So it used to be $211 average daily rate. It has dropped to $128. Next slide, please. So here in Seattle Southside, we have 7 properties that are temporarily closed. Those closed properties nationally are 848,000 rooms out of 5.4 million rooms. That's a 16% closure, temporary closure. And we're right in with the national average. It's very comparable. Many of these projects are projected to open late May or June, but you can take that with a little bit of grain of salt. It really will depend on what the governors do in the coming weeks and months. So it could obviously be pushed out or delayed. Next slide, please. We look a little closer to home. Seattle Southside hotels ran at 23.6% occupancy for the week. It continues to be buoyed somewhat by the airline and cargo related businesses, and we have a larger number of extended stay properties compared to downtown Seattle. And our market really is those isolating in place and medical workers. So we've pretty much leveled off. We think we'll stay, although we did see a slight increase this last week, we think we'll level off until any things change regarding travel bans. Next slide, please. And here you can see our average daily rate is running right at $75, and that's down significantly from $128, an average daily rate. Next slide, please. So the forecast crumbled at the as the disease spread regarding real GDP, and this is on a national level. GDP dropped for the first quarter 4.8% annualized, and we expect the second quarter will be even worse. And when we do our revenue per available room projections or forecast, it is based on GDP. As we look at phased recovery, convention centers, large sporting events, large major attractions, Those will be the last to open, maybe not even till the vaccine is created. So that will definitely continue to affect GDP. Next slide, please. April unemployment rose to a record 14.5%, and this is off of today's news. And payrolls dropped by an unprecedented $20.5 million in 1 month. By comparison, the steepest monthly loss on record back to 1939, when it was 1.96 million jobs in 1945 after the end of World War II. And the Fed chair now says that this is the worst economy in the US history. Next slide, please. So as we look at our forecast based on all of these various data points, year-over-year declines of this magnitude will unfortunately be the new normal until the COVID cases slow significantly. The greatest opportunity to mitigate these losses is to reduce the time required for recovery from the virus. Occupation continues to fall to unprecedented lows, with more than 75% of the rooms empty across the nation. As projected in the STR forecast, 2020 will be the worst year on record, again for 35 years. STR does, however, expect the industry to recover once the economy reignites and travel resumes, but it will be a lengthy recovery. So we have demand declining 51% this year as compared to last year. And they're predicting, and demand is rooms sold, a percent of change of plus 81.8 for 2021. Although we're hearing Tourism Economics and Smith Travel Report are going to modify this forecast. And so another forecast will be coming out in June. This is based on March 30th information. Next slide, please. While input data continues to unfold and the COVID situation rapidly evolves, information to date suggests a sustained downturn in the tourism hospitality industry. In this tourism economic report, we're looking at a recovery of about 12 to 18 months, but that may be extended in the June forecast from Smith or STR. So you can see an occupancy actual for 2019 was 66.1%. They're projecting as of March 30th a 37.9%. So that's 60% empty rooms by the end of the year. We had a good start to this year, so that's going to factor in. But we are going to have a slow summer, and then they're projecting for occupancy in 2021 of 59.7. Next slide, please. And all of that difficult news to hear, there still is hope. If you look at the blue line, that is China, and China's occupancy has begun to recover now that the virus seems to be behind them for the most part. So there is hope if we can get our hands wrapped around and contain this virus, that the economy, and particularly for hotel occupancy, will start to rise. Next slide, please. But we need to prepare for a new normal. I'll share a few highlights from Destination Analytics. They do ongoing weekly COVID-19 travel sentiment index study. And then the last report came out May 1st through 3rd. So I'll hit some of the highlights. And if you'd like to see the entire sentiment index study, it's available on our website. Next slide. Looking at their lifestyle priorities, these travelers, over the past 6 months, Americans are most in sync on staying safe from infection. 47.8% say that is their priority. Even more so than making money, which is 27.2%, or their emotional well-being, which is 30.4%. While there are more positive emotions in the last 5 weeks of this study, Americans largely associate fear and uncertainty with their travel plans right now. Next slide, please. Americans were asked on a 10-point scale, how concerned are you personally about contracting the virus? Personal concern in the past 6 weeks has been 6.7 out of 10, but generally speaking, a 70% of those surveyed are concerned. That will definitely impact how we market in the future based on this information. Next slide, please. There is a continued decline in the number of Americans saying they will avoid travel until the COVID-19 situation is over. But 74% say they agree and strongly agree they will avoid travel until this entire situation is over. Next slide, please. In looking forward to travel, the virus impact on American travel remains at 75%, with 69% canceling trips and 54.8% postponing trips. September now has the highest number of American travelers having at least tentative trip plans. That's about 23.5%. The average distance an American traveler will take in their next leisure trip is 686 miles overall, with baby boomers and travelers in the West and South reporting their trip at over 700 miles. The affluent travelers reporting nearly 800 miles. So not a lot of variance there between 686 and 800 miles. Not a lot of flights, I would take from that. Next slide, please. There will likely be an uneven return to air travel by Americans. Half of American travelers feel it's too risky to travel on an airplane right now, with 42.8% saying their next trip by air will not be until 2021 or later. Millennials and Gen Z travelers are somewhat less uncomfortable, with more saying their next trip by air will be this year compared to other generations. Although most have some concern about safety of flying on commercial airlines, business travelers are the relatively most comfortable traveling by air right now. The new protocols expected of airlines, the practices will make travelers feel more confident in air travel, and they're looking for their health at a high-tech cleaning kind of service for interiors of the flight, and requiring passenger health screenings to build confidence in air travel. Next slide, please. This is kind of hard to read, but the fonts are so small. But when asked about operational health and safety practices travelers want to see used at restaurants and commercial locations like malls and sporting venues, Americans are most interested in hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, and well-explained cleaning procedures. It's important to generating confidence for folks to venture out into the community. Next slide, please. Then travelers were asked, how would you feel if you saw an advertisement today promoting your community as a place for tourists to come and visit when it is safe? Agreement with the sentiment has decreased slightly in recent weeks compared to last week, where it was 67.6%. However, and hopefully as the curve flattens, there are other gains to humankind's fight against the virus. Fear about travel in our own communities will continue to decline. Given these feelings towards visitors in their communities at the moment, American travelers' opinions are also split on whether they would get pleasure from seeing an ad marketing their community as a place to visit when it's safe. 33.1% said they would be happy to see the advertisement. 36.2% said they would be unhappy. So it's really split down the middle. Next slide, please. Although nearly 2/3 of American travelers say they miss travel and can't wait to get out there and travel again, that's as of April 24th through the 26th, 63.5% of American travelers still agree they don't want visitors coming to their community right now. Only 1 in 10 disagrees with that sentiment. Next slide, please. The RTA plans to deploy a tourism recovery strategy immediately following the travel bans being lifted in order to build and rebuild business and economic impact as soon as possible. Next slide, please. I'll walk you through our recovery response. We have 4 major steps that we implemented immediately, say mid-March, when the stay home, stay safe policies were implemented. So the first phase immediate was to ensure messaging is appropriate and media reflects the changed behaviors. Our second step was mitigate business loss and communicate with business opportunities and support our partners. That's about where we are right now in our planning stage. We're moving into the build brand affinity, which is to stay present with relevant messages to our community and prepare for the recovery. And then recovery will be the 4th step, and that will be attract travelers back to the area and partners when responsible re-entry begins. So we're in that planning stage, ready to launch that business recovery when the time is right. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit in more detail what we did in the immediate reaction. If we look back to step 1, we implemented be sensitive to the changing and challenging times, pause and pivot marketing and communication campaigns, support our partners, and share community goodwill. Next slide. So we suspended all of our marketing campaigns, suspended all travel related campaigns such as cruise and local summer campaigns. We paid promoted posts were implemented to support any organic content that was available. Search remained running. Marketing campaigns for meetings and group markets were paused. We pivoted our sales efforts to connecting essentially to essential and emergency workers to be housed in our hotels, offering rooms so that they could isolate. And we focused on communication with partners on who is open, what businesses are open, who's offering takeout, things like that. And we closed our visitor center, but continue to help visitors through phone and email, but mostly through social media since there's few people moving around in the market right now. Next slide. So then we moved in to mitigate business loss. Knowing and keeping customers at the center of our business strategies is never been more important. So we knew we had to find new and creative ways to engage with them, thinking deeply about what they need at this time with the world changing all around us. Our opportunity to be heard by consumers is ripe because there's a lot of opportunity in the media right now. It's an all-time high with folks out there looking at what's available online and through the media. So there's a lot of opportunity, but the competition is low. So we're taking advantage of that opportunity by engaging with customers and supporting our partners. Next slide, please. This is the specific actions in this step. Reinvent social media and communications outreach. We did that by supporting the local businesses, and we're exploring Seattle Southside with virtual video and showing, again, support for our community. And then we moved on to creating virtual course on this, on our destination for travel industry folks who are planning their travel plans years or months out. So we have these virtual course and tours of our destination. Focusing on website content to keep folks engaged and inspire, as well as inform them of potential and future visitors. Created resource pages with the most up-to-date and relevant information for our partners that need to make their business decisions from trusted sources like STR, US Travel, travel sentiment reports, and disaster funding resources. We maintained meeting planner relationships through now viral communications, emphasizing that we are here to support them. We're available. Maintain progress on the regional expert program in association with Highline Community College to prepare for training Seattle Southside partners when travel does return. Next slide, please. We modified our homepage and redirected media campaigns to specific landing pages, updated events calendar and partner listings to reflect canceled events or closed businesses. Next slide, please. We added additional content development music playlists, Seattle Southside trivia, partnered with the chamber and the cities to promote restaurants, shared recipes to make it home, businesses that have gift cards available, online shops, hotel efforts to generate business, and support frontline workers. We delivered a residential mailer and communicated out our opt-in database. Media results from sharing viral activities, restaurant offerings, takeouts, and those kinds of social media activities resulted in over 72 million media impressions. Next slide, please. From March to April, our social media posts generated, just in those 2 months, 2 million impressions, about 300,000 reactions, comments, or shares. Our Seattle Southside Takeout Bingo was the #1 post on Facebook alone, received over 1,049 reactions, 173 comments, and 228 shares, reaching more people than any other post within that time frame. Next slide, please. So step 3 is the planning process for the recovery. In times like this, brands need to continue to connect with the community, our partners, our travelers, and our planners. Building affinity keeps Seattle Southside in the forefront of hearts and minds during the recovery phase, with growing sense of unity across our region and our country, our county. Next slide, please. So build fundamental elements in that recovery plan. That's critical. So we took a look. It will include personas and modify the customer journey to identify any new behaviors, mindsets, or intersection of opportunities. We'll conduct research to gather those insights. We'll interview or survey to gather input from our stakeholders and travelers. We'll conduct supplemental secondary research to identify trends and opportunities. We'll develop personas for target audience segments. We'll conduct a collaborative customer journey mapping session. We'll develop a new media plan, update our metrics and KPIs accordingly with all these new plans. Next slide, please. Then we'll focus on a new advertising with messaging around unity and support of the community. We'll create campaign featuring beautiful images from Seattle Southside with hopeful messages. Of course, we'll use our current assets we have in place already, but we'll leverage the hashtag #WeGotTheSeattle and the hashtag Seattle Southside Strong. Continue to amplify community-centric actions for our partners, focus on what they're doing and share the word. Explore creating a local giving back program to support those who've lost jobs or businesses and thank those who've helped during the crisis. So that's under exploration and development. Next slide, please. This is a really important strategy and action here for our group meeting business. We have a campaign to bring meetings back to Seattle Southside. We plan to develop a sponsorship program to bring meetings back to Seattle Southside hotels. We want this to be a tool that the RTA team can use as well as the hotel sales teams so that they can bring and book their clients back to Seattle Southside. Will be used for businesses not yet contracted and will be pre-qualified by the RTA team. We're looking at kind of a flat rate sponsorship based on the number of room nights actualized. Like when you sponsor a sporting group to come to town, that's how we're going to address these business meetings conventions. Also exploring a third-party planner sponsorship that represents they represent a very focused sort of niche market, and we want to develop something to incentivize those third-party planners to bring their groups to Seattle Southside. This type of program is going to be more prevalent upon the recovery from other destinations, so we need to keep in the competitive mix, and so it's necessary that we do this. We'll be focusing our meetings on the drive market initially, and then we'll branch out from the drive market as confidence builds in travelers. Next slide, please. Now this is the phase 2 of the recovery. Recovery for the tourism industry being affected so heavily will require a really strong voice out there. So we plan to unveil this campaign as folks are ready to re-enter into travel. So the timing may be somewhat flexible based on what happens with the COVID. We'll need to adapt and adjust to the new normal, and be willing to shuffle or evolve as we learn new information. It certainly will need to be flexible and responsive. Next slide, please. So we'll create this highly visible campaign that brings visitors and groups back to Seattle Southside. This will include new creative that reflects the consumer's new mindset, brand message that celebrates Seattle Southside. It will include retail messages that describe the continuing precautions. We'll celebrate with Seattle Southside on the campaign for phase 2 to ensure similar messages, but our audience, we're collaborating with Visit Seattle on a campaign for phase 2, and this funding is coming from King County, and we hope that the funding will be approved next week, Tuesday. If we get those funding dollars approved for this campaign, it will be in collaboration with Visit Seattle, and we'll reach out to all of the stakeholders in South King County. This will be first to primary of all King County campaign. And so we look forward to working with each of you, our chamber members, our chambers, our major attractions, stakeholders in South King County particularly will want your input, your feedback as we develop these campaigns, and then we'll initially start out, again, as I said, marketing in the King County area, but then we'll move out. And this is where Visit Seattle and the RTA will deviate, because we have different audiences. We bring different sized groups, those kinds of things, to our destination. So we'll deviate after the initial King County campaign. Next slide, please. So we'll engage with our partners to develop the feedback. We'll incorporate content partners from various organizations, which will increase our reach and add to our budget efficiencies. We'll build a strong media plan for high visibility. We'll fully integrate across all of our channels and leverage any assets we have, particularly video assets from 2019. Next slide, please. Seattle's backyard will be used as a continuing theme, represented through a new look and visual direction, a virtual Seattle Southside experience to pique interest and a desire to travel to Seattle Southside, and will emphasize safety. Next slide, please. This phase 2 will also focus on messaging through dedicated emails, third-party associations, and promotions to group-focused planners. This will include digital and social media to a great extent. We'll also develop additional video content and organize destination experiential familiarization tours. We'll bring groups and planners in groups of 10 to experience our destination. Next slide, please. So all of these more detailed reports from Smith Travel, STR, Destination Analytics, and Tourism Economics are all available on our website. You'll find other things like which businesses are open or closed, guidance for travelers, travel and health advisories, and many, many other resources. So I encourage you to visit that page of our website. And with that, I thank you, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Perfect. Again, thank you so much, Katherine. That was an amazing presentation and overview of not just, the current state of affairs, but, what we have to look forward to. And I particularly appreciate that, there is hope in that market, and that we're looking forward to partnering with you. I'm going to facilitate some Q&A right now. So we do have some questions. Again, just reminding everybody that you do have that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And if you have a question for Katherine, please go ahead and put that in. So the first question Katherine, is are you aware of any of the lodging properties located in the Seattle Southside area transitioning from short-term lodging into long-term residential properties in an attempt to weather this downturn, maybe increase occupancy rates?
I also wanted to mention that I have Megan McGuire, our VP of the sales division. And so feel free to chime in, Megan. And then we also have Jacob from our official marketing agency. So you're welcome to chime in. I'm not at this time, off the top of my head, aware of any of those properties, but we can certainly look into that and get back to Andrea and share anything we've learned in that regard. There are, I know downtown Seattle has a number of properties that have converted in that regard. Megan, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I also am unaware of properties in Seattle Southside.
Perfect. Okay, great. Next question. So after a vaccine is found, hopefully soon, and things start to turn around, do you anticipate one segment of the consumer market to rebound faster than the other, specifically a certain demographic or type of traveler? I know you talked a lot about, a business traveler and how that's going to be, a little bit of a different approach to capture that business travel for the meeting market, rather than the leisure traveler, government, adventure, et cetera. If you could speak a little bit to that.
Well, in our plans, we know that the first thing we need to do is to just get our consumers in King County out and about and build confidence to go to restaurants and theaters and those kinds of business. So that drive market's going to be critical up front. And then we're going to branch out to, and these are all leisure markets at this point. Then we'll branch out to Spokane, Vancouver, Yakima, and target those. Maybe they'll just travel a little bit further. Then we'll work on the fly market third, and then it'll be the group market final.
Perfect. Great. And so this question is from Council Member Harris from the amazing city of Des Moines. So JC, thank you for your question. He's asking if there's a copy of the presentation slide or the Zoom download. And so we always have copies of the webinars available on our website, on our YouTube channel, so that people can watch them. We know, especially for our small business community, they are very busy. So this information is very important, and we want to make sure that they can access it at any time. They can pause, they can rewind, and so it will be available on our website, seattlesouthsidechamber.com. And I'm sure Katherine will share it with you and your team too, Megan, at the RTA, so you can send it out in your social channels too, so that people can watch it later. So I appreciate that. That's a key component to our smart webinars. Again, recording them and then having them available later. We want to, again, be able to maximize the engagement and the services and resources for all in our community. So thank you, Councilmember Harris. Another question. Have you seen any hoteliers modifying schematics and planning meeting spaces for less capacity, to accommodate social distancing? So, as we get into kind of, phase 3, of the phase, smart, Washington plan, we will be able to gather in, semi-larger groups. Are you aware of any of that, Katherine?
If I understand the question correctly, I know that Marriott and Hilton are developing their own brand standards for safety guidelines that they'll be implementing in the hotels. And so we'll be also sharing what we are learning out of what comes out of, the governor's office with other businesses beyond just the hotel industry. But there will be a wide variety of sort of certifications, for lack of a better term, which really spells out the strategies and tactics that businesses are implementing in order to make it safe. I haven't seen the specific details, but I know they're in the planning stages and working on that right now, soon to be released.
Perfect. Thank you, Katherine. I think that's really important, even for organizations like ours at the Chamber. We hold many meetings, and, as we're looking at, what the new world order might be, having these kind of hybrid events where maybe you only have 20 people physically in the room, and then you also have, virtual function as well. So I appreciate that. Next question, are the temporary closures that you outlined in your presentation, Katherine, in part because of, individual operators, have multiple operations in our service area, and it's a matter of, consolidating resources, or do you know any more about what that, particular, driver might have been for those particular properties?
Well, it's exactly that, and probably a number of other factors. The overhead to manage that property, there just isn't enough occupancy at this point, and it's just too costly to keep that operating. So there are a wide variety. I would say the Doubletree Hilton consolidated. That's a very good example of one of our properties that did that for efficiency. But I think there are a lot of different reasons depending on the size of the property. We have 3 Motel 6s, and together they all closed in this destination.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This is a question, I guess it could be maybe a question for any of us here, which is, do we have any idea, when we will be clear to travel, right? When will the stay-at-home order, be lifted? Here's an update for everybody that's still watching. The governor does have another press conference today at 2:30. So we might have a clearer answer at 2:30 today. But I know probably what everybody else knows, which is, there's going to be a phased-in approach, and we're going to phase up, and there's also the possibility that we might have to phase down after phasing up. So I wish I did know, but I don't have any information on that. Katherine, do you have any insights?
No, not at this time.
I wish we did. I know, we've been doing so much of the advocacy work at the chamber too, reaching out to our local lawmakers, trying to get a sense of, really what's happening, in these task force meetings and at the governor's office, to try to get some insight, to try to anticipate what might be coming next. And it's pretty clear that, there's a plan, and then they have to adjust the plan because they get different data, right? And so
Right.
it's an ever moving target, which is why I think there is some hesitancy to say, well, this is what we're going to do on this day at this time, because, then an hour later it can change. And that has happened. I've gotten an update, send this out, this is happening, everybody, FYI, and then, oops, never mind, sorry, we changed our mind, right? So again, trying to, as you said, Katherine, just release as much of the good information and avoid the confusion as much as possible. That's our goal. Here is another question. I'm trying to monitor it in the chat, which is just a little tricky. So just to say out loud, if you could put your questions in the Q&A, that'll just make it a little bit easier for me. So this is from IHG. They're currently working with clients to implement that, so that social distance configuration. So thank you so much to Linda and IHG for being able to help with that. Thank you. Another question: if we are expecting people who are traveling, are they expected to quarantine, like other places? Do you know anything about travelers, being expected to quarantine at all, Katherine, or maybe Department of Health guidelines on traveling and quarantining?
I haven't seen anything like that yet. And that would probably come out of our governor's office. So I haven't seen anything about that yet.
Perfect. Okay. Perfect. So questions keep on coming. So I'm just going to keep on going. We have until 1 o'clock. So again, the goal with the seminars is that it really is a subject matter expert. And then you have a solid amount of time to, get all your questions answered and facilitate this conversation. So appreciate everybody participating.
Andrea, if it helps, we can alternate the questions and go back and forth if that helps you. But
I think I'm okay. If I might raise my hand and ask you to help me, but I think I've got it so far. If everybody can just be patient with me as I read along. So perfect. So Awesome. Again, another elected official who's joining us today, Senator Kaiser from the 33rd District. Thank you so much, Senator, for being here. And she's asking if we're tracking small business closures, in our area related to hospitality. And so I can answer that, and the answer is yes. We are tracking those. Again, as Katherine mentioned, there are a lot of businesses and workers who are maybe not directly related to the hospitality and tourism industry, and that they're not employed by a hotel, but they are supplemental or support services related. And so we are tracking that, and we do have that information. There's kind of two parts of that data collection. One is permanent closure. So there are some businesses that are saying that they will permanently close. And then there are some, as Katherine, showed, that are temporary closures, and, we're hoping to reopen. Certainly what we're cognizant of and very deeply aware of is that, providing those technical services to those small businesses is key, so that they have the strategic advantage to be able to weather the storm. Because as we know, we don't know how long this might last, right? So if you have a cash flow model that says, well, I can be temporarily closed until May 25th, but then something else happens and there's another extension, and that's not enough for you, then we might see more permanent closures. And so a huge part of our work with the task force has been, we've done hundreds of technical assistance appointments, with small business, just making sure that they have the education and resources necessary to hopefully mitigate how many of those small businesses are closed permanently. They can weather the storm and then come back open again. So thank you so much, Senator, for that question. Next, this is from a student at Highline College. Fantastic. We love Highline College. And he's in the host program. So that's a program that you referenced, Katherine. And so he knows the customer service hospitality industry go hand in hand, and also has experienced, the highs and lows, of the industry as the economy goes up and down. And we all know that sometimes this is the first industry, to go, but it's also often the first industry, to bounce back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So his question is, what support systems are in place, for those, who are highly invested in this industry, mentors, people to speak with, keep our heads up as we move forward. He's talking about how he's met so many people who have different perceptions of what's happening. And some only have experience in this industry, and they're unable to find, jobs at this time because that's what their industry is. I'll just give a brief answer, and then I'll turn it over to you, Katherine, because I'm sure you have thoughts to add. We do have a mentorship and an internship program, at the chamber. We call it our, mentorship, internship, matchmaking. There's a web form people can fill out and say what they're interested in. Are they, what type of mentor they're interested in, or internship or job experience. Some it's resume help, interview help, career transition appointments, all of those types of things. We absolutely can assist with that, and do, because we have such a phenomenal community of business professionals and business leaders who have said that they want to give back to the community. So especially people, who are, learning and in education, there is a wide selection of mentors and opportunities available for you that I know of. And then I know there's lots of other, resources that we could refer you to. Katherine?
Yes, and we also offer an internship program through the Regional Tourism Authority. And I'll say this, I'll hand it over to Megan. Megan actually teaches at Highline Community College in the hospitality program. So Megan, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, I will be teaching. It was postponed due to this this issue that we're all dealing with. But yeah, I've been working very closely with Highline College to make sure that we are there for these students coming out into the industry, especially now. It's more important than ever. So anything that we can do to work together, any questions any students have, where myself and the team at the RTA is very happy to help in any way that we can.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Megan. Next question. Do you have any insight into the state of the cruise industry for recovery time? So again, pre-post cruise travel was such an important part of our local business. We're hearing lots of rumors depending on, again, as the other question said, depending on who you talk to, you get different, perspective and information, that it might not come back until 2022, 23. Do you have any information or insights on that?
Well, some of the folks I've spoken with at the port insist that we'll return at the end of summer. I think that's very aspirational. And others, again, have said it won't be till next year, next season. So we're just going to have to wait and see. The answers are all over the place.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And this question was related to that about, cruise ships coming this summer. And again, we've already answered that. It's aspirational. We haven't, we haven't gotten a hard no. We haven't gotten a hard yes. So we continue to be cautiously optimistic.
Right.
Perfect. So this question is directed to you, Katherine. If you could elaborate a little bit on the Seattle Southside Visit Seattle King County campaign. Will other King County destinations be included? If so, how can they learn more, about participating? And I know you mentioned, we have to get the funding first. I know our chamber wrote a letter supporting the county doing that, emergency disbursement for increased funding. But maybe if, as again, cautiously optimistic, aspirational that will all be done, Tuesday evening. How can people participate or get involved or learn more?
I thank you for that question because I'd like to spend a little bit of time on that question. So Visit Seattle and the Seattle Southside RTA came together to pitch this idea to the King County Council, and they've been very supportive. We had over 60 businesses sign a letter of support, plus individual letters from our cities, from the Port of Seattle, from Alaska Airlines. So the community support is overwhelming. Seattle will get the majority of those funds, but we'll get our fair share. The allocation is $8 million, so downtown will get $6 million, and the Seattle Southside RTA will receive $2 million. With that $2 million, it is our intent to reach out to most of the stakeholders, chambers of commerce's, major attractions, the cities in South King County, to have an opportunity to have input in this campaign, recognizing that initially it is going to be on the just get out and shop and dine and visit attractions locally. And then that will move out into a drive audience, and then that will move sort of attracting folks from other destinations such as Spokane, Yakima. Then it'll be the fly market, and then it'll be groups. At some point, Visit Seattle and the RTA will deviate from their plans because we really target different kinds of travelers. But initially, we're going to do a lot of outreach. That's why I have Jacob on the line here. A part of that planning process, once the funds are authorized, will be to reach out and get that input to create this plan. So through social media, our website, through just conversations, webinars such as this, we'll do as much research, reach out as we can to make sure that this program does what it's supposed to do and build confidence in consumer travel.
Perfect. Jacob, maybe you could add just a little bit on, from a PR marketing perspective, certainly your work has, shifted a lot in the last couple of months. Maybe you could just offer, what your approach is or what you were recommending, not just for the, this campaign, but, even just other businesses and other campaigns in general. It'd be great to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I think there's not a one size fits all for anyone. So we're taking each industry as its own and talking and really trying to be mindful of what's going on, but also look to the future and how we rebuild and how we recover. So I think that's where we are now in this process with most of the clients that we're working with, is really trying to start there, make it a very collaborative approach, working with many stakeholders across the teams of people that we're working with to ensure that we have that, so that we can go forward with the best of our knowledge to move and to get in front of the different audiences and reach them this time when of such uncertainty. And the mindsets, as we know, are changing daily, as we've seen through what Katherine has already shown us. That's another thing we're dealing with. It's just in the post-COVID world, we just don't know what it's going to look like yet. And each area that we're targeting, the phased approach looks different. What people are expecting looks different. So all of those are things that we're working with. So long story short, there's no one way to approach it. It's just different. But again, it starts with really working together, digging in there, and coming up with a plan. And the on-site is to also be looking towards recovery too. That's one thing we need to continue to do. We need to continue to be focused on. Is we are where we are, but we need to look at recovery, but also be mindful of the current situation.
Thanks, Jacob. Anyone else have anything to add before we move on to the next question? Perfect. So Megan, you did receive some confirmation just relating, back to the other question about the cruise industry, that Holland America, Seabourn, Carnival, and Princess are all officially done for the 2020 Alaska season.
Yeah, that was just recently announced.
Perfect. So this question, I don't know, Katherine, we might need to put a pin in this one and get back to them. They're asking if the port is still building the new terminal in Seattle, or did that project pause? I mean, I know it was paused, when all construction was paused, but I believe construction has resumed. I would have to get a confirmation from the port. I don't know if you know what's happening down there at the terminal.
Now, I presumed construction has returned, so I presumed, but we should put a pin in it and verify.
Okay. I'm going to ask you, this is where I'm asking you for help, Renata. Can you just take down who's asking that question, and that we will get them an official feedback, from the port soon. Perfect. Okay, next question. Other than the Show Wa Love campaign, do you know of other efforts WTA is doing to help support the tourism industry? And maybe even just tell people what the WTA is.
WTA is Washington Tourism Alliance. It's a membership program, was created after the state tourism office was shut down roughly 10 years ago or so. It's been carrying the marketing assets ever since. They are working very closely with Washington Hospitality Association right now to create a campaign. We're very excited about this. One of our team members, Nick, is representing South and Eastside King County. So he'll be doing a lot of outreach to various businesses to participate and advocate and create this new campaign. But it's just now in the forming stages, so I don't want to get ahead of what they're doing. But very excited to be a part of that. And I think with the Washington Hospitality Association taking the leadership role in this, we're here to support them to implement this campaign.
Great. All right, next question, Brian from Highline College again. So he's saying, amidst all the chaos of the virus, how it has affected our lives on a daily basis, he can assume that new SOPs will be implemented in every aspect of the customer service industry, mainly cleaning practices. How can we as industry professionals use this to help ease the mind of consumers? Meaning through websites, social media, letting customers know that certain businesses are safe to visit without worry. Also, is there any word of new hiring processes, meaning, medical checks before applicants get hired? There's HIPAA laws and, other things in terms of, HR people accessing, what type of medical information, but is there a way, to maybe, bypass this or help with the perception of the employees that are hired, that everybody is healthy? So there's a couple pieces to that question. So I'll let you tackle part of it first, Katherine, and then I'm sure that I might have some things to add as well.
Well, that is exactly what this initial part of the King County funding is for, is to get that word out there about the safety health practices our businesses are implementing to build that consumer confidence. So that is a big part of phase one, and we'll use every channel available to us to get those messages out. A lot of this is going to be driven by corporate decisions, brand decisions, and some of it will come out of the governor's office. So we'll have to sort through all of that, but we're excited. We think it's a key component of moving forward in the recovery. I'm not as familiar with the hiring practice issues, but so maybe you could speak to that, Andrea.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I think as I mentioned, when we got on this call, lots of conversations with Department of Commerce, L&I, Employment Security Department, all kind of, recommending, adjusting, employee, practices or policies to include, some type of, employee self-check. And so depending on the industry, that is either, confirming or signing something when you come in that, you have not had a temperature of 100 or more the night before, and that you woke up this morning and before your shift are also confirming that you don't have a temperature of 100 or more before you start your shift. Certainly if you're in the healthcare industry, they're actually taking your temperature, right? So it's great that you did it last night, but you need to come present yourself, get your temperature checked, you receive your PPE for the day, right? So they can verify all right then, no temperature, you're good to go. They're doing a self-assessment, you don't have any symptoms. And then they're passing out the PPP at that time. So I think it will vary, depending on the industry. But I think, for sure the guidelines are at least, asking that there is, some type of self-assessment. And then again, depending on the industry, we've heard of everything from, people having to pass through infrared thermometer checks, right? That it's not, it's not enough to just self-verify, but, that you're, and that's for employees and customers too. Right. So just like, it's interesting to think about, just like you would walk through, the, detectors to detect, shoplifting, right. It's like, there'd be another one right there, like, beep, 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 a temperature check. So yeah, we don't know honestly yet for sure, because again, some of those guidelines haven't been coming down, but, the guidelines are, saying, make sure that you're well, do wellness checks, routinely clean, services that are high touch services, and those types of things. So I hope that answered your question, Brian. If we can add, anything else, please feel free to go ahead and put that in the Q&A box, and we'll try to tackle it. And then next question. Yes, retail, so important to the Southside area, with Westfield, South Center, in the city of Tukwila, historically bringing millions to the area. Can you share any, news or insights, on retail or the shopping district, how we're supporting, retail in the South Side? And I can talk about that too, Katherine, if you wanted to take it first, or I can take it first. We could paper, rock, scissors.
Well, I'll give it to you, the chair of the task force.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, that's that, as you said, this is what the task force is working on, right? So we've created the Southside Mitigation and Recovery Task Force, that is a group of it's a public-private partnership. So we have public officials and public employees with private business and private investors, all working together on how can we support not just retail businesses, but all businesses. So we, again, really focusing a lot too on small businesses, because we know, small businesses are, probably feeling the greatest impact, but not ignoring, large businesses and shopping centers, such as Westfield South Center. We hosted a webinar. So again, this goes back to, if you go to the SeattleSouthsideChamber.com, /smart, you can watch a webinar where we kind of tackled, what is the future of retail? Last September, we did a Future of Retail Summit, and we brought back a lot of our panelists, from that event, to talk about, well, the future looks different now in, April than, it did, in September. So, what are retailers and shopping centers doing specifically. So I would encourage, everyone, but especially if you have questions on, what's happening in retail or how are shopping centers, trying to, adapt or, help support, their tenants at this time. It'd be better for you to hear it from the subject matter experts than me trying to, repeat what they said again. But we're absolutely focused on it. And there's great information in that webinar as well. Perfect. I see no more questions in the Q&A. And then I'm looking in the chat. I see no more questions in the chat. So maybe we'll just go around and offer, any final thoughts, from our panelists. We have Scott Schaefer, who's, a headshot is down there in the corner. He's our media advisor, and so he is going to help us with broadcasting, future recordings of our webinars as well. So if people are wondering, who that guy is down there, in the screen, he is there helping us on the back end. You can wave to everybody, Scott. Perfect. Thank you. Any other final thoughts from anybody? Any panelists, speakers? No.
Well,
Katherine?
I'll just say thank you for the opportunity, and for those of you out there in the audience for taking time to listen to the presentation today. Being neighbors to the 8th largest airport in the nation, tourism and travel is critical to our community. And so I welcome your participation in the development of the new plan for recovery. My email is Katherine with a K, Katherine @seattlesouthside.com. I welcome your emails. I'm happy to give out my phone number via email and would be willing to have a conversation as well. I look forward to the future. I'm hopeful, but I am excited that we'll have all of you participating in that recovery from the South King County perspective. So thank you for your time.
Perfect. And again, thank you so much, Katherine, for joining us. Thank you to Megan and Jacob also for taking time to share your expertise and insight. For Scott, for your technical assistance and helping to, just expand our reach and our engagement. We really appreciate it. Again, smart webinars every Friday at 11 o'clock in the morning. Go to our website, seattlesouthsidechamber.com, for more information. Again, appreciate your support. Appreciate everything that we're doing to try to, help encourage, growth and a strong recovery in our partnership. So we were founded on the belief that we are better and stronger together. The only way we're going to get through this is together. So again, appreciate you making the time, and thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.